Hello students, welcome to the third video of reproduction in animal. I am Rahima, and in the previous video of the same topic we discussed about the female reproductive system and also how the fertilization process takes place. But in this video, we are going to start off our discussion with the following topics. So let's start. We are going to cover viviparous and oviparous animals, and then we will move on to the development of embryo, and then we are going to finish off with metamorphosis in frog and silk moth. Okay, but we will start off with a short video. Okay, so let's see.
The journey of life starts with a fascinating race. Starting with millions of sperm, only one, the fastest and the strongest, will reach the finish line. Some fall out of the race, getting lost in the rush through the narrow fallopian tubes, while some are stopped by natural obstacles which protect the woman's body from intruders. Those who make it closer to the end compete fiercely with each other. Together, they attack the egg cell. Their only goal is to be the first one to enter the egg. Only one will make it through, but the others simplify this mission by slowly dissolving the membrane of the egg. Finally, we have a winner. The winning sperm enters the egg and conception occurs. Half the man's and half the woman's chromosomes combine. This creates a unique DNA code which is needed to create new life. These combined chromosomes form the first cell of the new baby. This is now called the zygote. The zygote starts to divide into a cluster of cells and begins to travel to the friendly and safe habitat of the uterus. When the zygote is divided into a bubble of cells, a blastocyst is formed with an inner layer of cells making up the embryo and an outer layer which will protect and nourish the embryo. The blastocyst then finds a comfortable place to stay in the uterus.
So guys, as you would have understood, this video particularly shows the fertilization process and the movement of the fertilized egg down the fallopian tube into the uterus where the implantation takes place. So this video was shown to recall the parts of fertilization from the previous video. So let's move on with the next topic, that is viviparous and oviparous animals. So here we are talking about again the higher animals. The higher animals only show this characteristic where they are involved in either laying eggs or giving birth to the babies. Okay, so the viviparous animals show viviparity and oviparous animals show oviparity. Viviparous animals are those animals which give birth to babies. Babies of their own, obviously. And among the viviparous animals, we have all the mammals. Mammals except the duck-billed platypus, which we are going to include in the oviparous animals. Okay. Among the mammals, even aquatic mammals like dolphin, whales are also involved. So those animals which lay eggs. Okay. Examples starting from fishes, amphibians, reptiles also are included, and birds. Birds also lay eggs. Okay, and an exception to the mammals, like I said, duck-billed platypus, okay, which is an oviparous animals. Okay, so these are the two types of animals, viviparous and oviparous. Now, this next topic is development of embryo, and let me show you a video first where the complete development is starting from the fertilization. The complete development of embryo is explained. Okay, so let's begin with the video.
The embryo is an early developmental stage of animals. In humans, the embryo begins to develop about 4 days after an egg is fertilized. Appearing initially as a tiny mass of cells, it eventually gives rise to the fetus, an obvious human form. In the first days of the embryo's existence, it journeys along the fallopian tube. About 1 week after conception, it reaches the uterus, which is prepared to receive it with a network of blood vessels and glands. By this time, the embryo has become a fluid-filled sphere of nearly 100 cells. Some of the cells become finger-like projections that anchor the embryo to the uterus to draw nourishment and oxygen and to rid the embryo of wastes. The anchoring cells secrete a hormone that will prevent the disintegration of the lining. Once the embryo anchors to the uterus, there will be no menstrual period. 3 weeks after fertilization, though still smaller than a grain of rice, the embryo has a primitive heart. Through the following weeks, its tissues and organs will develop. In 4 weeks, it looks like this. 5 weeks, about the size of a pea. 6 weeks, 7 weeks. At 2 months, it is called a fetus. When the embryo attaches to the uterus, a complex structure of vessels and cells forms, which is called the placenta. A network of the embryo's blood vessels closely intermingles next to the mother's blood supply. While the blood of the embryo and that of the mother don't actually mix, materials such as oxygen, nutrients, and waste products can pass between mother and embryo. If their blood were to mix, the embryo would be rejected by the mother's immune system. This happens because the embryo essentially is a foreign organism. It shares only half of its genetic constitution with the mother. The umbilical cord emerges from the placenta and leads to the abdomen of the fetus. When the cord is removed at birth, the belly button is created. During pregnancy, the placenta and umbilical cord serve as pathways for everything the fetus needs to grow. By the 3rd month, all the organs of the fetus are essentially in place, and the fetus enters a period of intense growth. During the 4th month, the fetus doubles in size. Its muscles twitch. By the 5th month, it is about 8 inches, nearly 21 centimeters long. It kicks occasionally. Its heart rate averages about 140 beats per minute, twice the speed of an adult's. After 9 months, it is fully developed and birth occurs.
So guys, this video is specifically showed step by step how the development of embryo occurs after the fertilization process, and during each point of time within the gestation period, that is of 9 months or 280 days, what develops, what kind of changes takes place inside the mother's womb. Okay, so let's move on to the next topic, that is metamorphosis. Metamorphosis, this term is defined as the process of transformation of a larva into an adult. Okay, this process is very common in animals like frog, insects, basically. Okay, and many other lower animals where the larval stage it changes into the adult. Okay, but among all the animals, we are specifically going to discuss metamorphosis in frogs and in one of the insect known as silk moth. Okay, so let's begin with metamorphosis in frogs. So this picture shows the life cycle where the adult frog lays eggs, and the eggs after fertilization they convert into embryo. Fertilization process is not shown here, they have external fertilization, and after the fertilization the embryo is also developing outside only, and this embryo undergoes multiple divisions and give rise to tadpoles. Okay, the larval stage of the frog is known as tadpole. Okay, so tadpole larva, the larva is tadpole. So this tadpole is clinging to the water plants. It has an aquatic lifestyle. It simply lives inside the water and undergoes metamorphosis and then convert into an adult. Okay, so these tadpoles they have external gills for breathing and the tail also which keeps on growing. Okay, slowly the hind legs appear. Okay, and they then lives from the food that is stored in the tail. Then slowly the front legs will appear and tail starts becoming shorter. Okay, and after that it completely develops into a young frog. This young frog then develops into an adult frog, and then it comes out of the water. That is why these animals they are known as amphibians. That means they have a dual life. They can live off on land as well as in water. Okay, so you have to remember that the larval stage of frogs is known as tadpole larva. They have an aquatic lifestyle and they breathe through gills inside the water, and they also have a tail so that they can move around easily. Okay, now next is silk moth, metamorphosis in silk moth. So in the metamorphosis process, you can see here we are going to begin with, yeah, the adult moths they mate with each other and the female moth lays eggs. Eggs will be laid on leaves, the type of leaves which are eaten up by the developing larva makes gives the name to the silk. Okay, so if the moth is feeding on the mulberry leaves, then it is known as the mulberry silk. Okay, so a tiny black caterpillar hatches out of the egg, which you can see here. Okay, this caterpillar eats mulberry leaves and it grows bigger and bigger, and it grows through four molts. Molting is the shedding of the skin. Okay, so before moving forward, I'll just mention here molting is the shedding of skin. Okay, as it goes bigger and bigger, it has to shed skin and new skin develops which can accommodate the size of that larva. Okay, so the caterpillar is the larval stage. Okay, now this caterpillar it enters the cocoon stage. It spins a cocoon of silk threads around itself, and that is just its saliva. and inside the cocoon the caterpillar changes into a pupa. Okay, so there was an egg developed into caterpillar larva, it formed a cocoon in cocoon outside and inside the cocoon the stage is known as pupa. Now the people unwind the silk thread from the cocoon to weave into silk cloth. They do so by boiling them at the cocoon stage and taking out the silk thread. Okay, uh, the pupa changes into a moth, and the moth comes out of the cocoon in the form of tiny little butterflies. Okay, so pupa converts into an adult. So you have to remember egg develops into caterpillar larva, larval stage is the caterpillar, larva into a pupa, pupa into an adult. Okay, so larva is caterpillar. You have to remember these things. And yes, pupa is basically inside the cocoon. Okay, so let's understand this more with the help of two interesting videos that I have for you. So let's begin with the first one.
Oh, we are sorry, Mr. Frog. My cat wasn't aware that those are your eggs. Phew. Come out, little kitty. Mr. Frog has gone. Hey, friends. I'm sure, just like this kitty, you must be curious to know more about frogs' eggs and their life. So, let's hop on into the tiny world of these amphibians and learn about the life cycle of a frog. Zoom in! It all starts with a female frog laying hundreds of eggs, generally in a pond that vary in size, colors, and shapes with different species. These eggs float on the surface of the water, coated with a jelly-like substance that acts as a protective layer. But despite that, most of the eggs get destroyed due to various natural calamities like rain and wind, due to which only a few get fertilized. This mass of fertilized egg in the jelly is known as spawn. After a few days, a baby frog known as tadpole hatches out of the egg that looks more like a fish than a frog and feeds on the yolk of the egg from which it came out. Well, that's one hungry fella. As time passes by, tadpoles develop external gills that help them breathe under the water. Their tails begin to elongate and fins also develop. They spend their time eating plants and algae as they continue to grow for several weeks. After a few weeks, their external gills begin to disappear and hind limbs start to appear. Then, after a few more weeks, the tadpole begins to look somewhat like a frog as it turns into a froglet. And during this stage, they develop forelimbs and lungs for breathing outside water. And on the final stage, their tail becomes smaller and smaller and eventually disappears. Then it hops right out of the water and onto dry land for the first time, where it enters the adult stage in the next couple of years to lay their eggs, and more tadpoles hatch as the cycle continues. Trivia time! Did you know that the tadpole uses the nutrients stored in its tail as food? So until its tail is completely gone, it doesn't need anything else to eat in its journey of becoming a young frog. It's question time!
We will do the question time later. I would like to show you another video which shows the metamorphosis in a silkworm. So it is a silent video. with a little bit of music. You just have to identify the stages that we learned through the picture, that we learned through the cycle, and understand it yourself. Okay, so let's start. So I hope you could identify the stages. in the videos, shown in the videos. So we are going to start off with the questions now. And in the first question, you have to identify the oviparous and the viviparous animals from the figures below. Okay, so the first animal, the first figure is of polar bear, and the second figure, duck-billed platypus is shown. Okay, so like I said, duck-billed platypus is a mammal, but it is the only exception among the viviparous mammals. Okay, so duck-billed platypus is oviparous and polar bear is viviparous among these pictures. In this question, we have to list the changes that take place during the development of a human embryo. Okay, in the video, I'm just going to list down the changes step by step. So, after 4 days of fertilization, okay, all these days are from day 0, that is the fertilization. Okay, the day when fertilization occurs. Okay, so after 4 days, the zygote starts dividing and forms embryo. Okay, after 1 week of the fertilization, implantation takes place, and after 3 weeks, the primitive heart develops. Okay, after 6 to 8 weeks, the limbs develop, the hands and the legs with fingers, tiny little fingers also, and after 3 months, about 3 months, all the organs of the fetus are in place. Okay, and the 5th month, it is about 8 inches or 21 centimeters long, and after 9 months it is fully developed and the childbirth occurs. So these are the changes that take place during the development of a human embryo. Let's move on. After how many days does implantation take place after the process of fertilization? So this can take 7 or 8 or 9 days for the implantation to occurs. Usually within 1 week of time, the implantation occurs after fertilization. Okay, so yes, now you have to look at the picture. Okay, and this picture shows the size of the embryo, which is about the size of a pea. You have to tell about how many after about how many weeks the embryo is about the size of a pea, which is this. Okay, so this is about after. If you are probably thinking about, I'll just go to the previous question if you do not remember. Just after the 3rd week, the primitive heart develops. Okay, and after about 5 weeks, it looks like this, and the size is about the size of a pea. Okay, so let's move on. what do you call the larvae of frogs? Mention two important adaptations in them. So the larvae of frogs is known as tadpole larva, and the two important adaptations which are found in them is the gills, okay, development of gills so that they can breathe underwater because they have aquatic lifestyle. Okay, and the second is the development of tail so that they can swim around in the water. Okay, next question is you have to identify the stage of life cycle of silk moth in the figure below. This is cocoon inside which the pupa is present. Okay, and this white colored structure is actually the silk. Okay, now the next question says mother gives birth to a baby but the baby has characters of both parents. How? Although the mother is giving birth to a baby, but before the birth, during the process of fertilization, the sperm fuses with the eggs. Okay, sperm has its own haploid number of chromosome, and egg has its own haploid number of chromosomes, which mix together and forms a diploid cell, which is known as zygote. So half of the number of chromosomes are of the sperm and half are from the egg. That's why the baby has character of both mother and the father. Okay. So guys, I hope you liked the video and most of all you understood the video. If you have any more questions, you can post them on the forum. I would be very happy to answer them. And please stay tuned for my next video. That would be the last of reproduction in animals. Thank you.